Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kelly Paletta. I'm Director of Sales and Marketing here at eXp Technical. Welcome to our webinar. Our topic today is Blueprints, BIM, and Chaos. We'll be talking about taking control of project data in architectural, engineering, and construction firms. Now, if you're not in one of those industries, don't worry, you're not in the wrong room. I think you'll find that a lot of the concepts, a lot of the examples that we pose today, even though they are somewhat AEC specific, they still have pretty broad, widespread application. So even if you work for a nonprofit org or a creative agency or an accounting firm or a law office, you still may get some value. In fact, I'm pretty confident that you will get some value out of attending this session today. Um, let's see, I wanted to share. Just want to give you an overview of what to expect as we go through our conversation today. And let me pull up. There we go. So I have a little bit of information to give you an overview, let you know what to expect today. Um, our agenda appears here. And for those of you that have attended these events in the past, you know that sometimes these events are kind of like a podcast where they're very conversational. Other times we have guests that have very scripted and prepared material and a lot of PowerPoint slides. Today we're somewhere in between. We have some examples and some practical examples that we're ready to share with you. But there's, aside from my portion here, there's not a whole lot of PowerPoint. Instead, it's going to be a conversation that focuses on real world examples that we want to share with our audience today. But you'll also notice that there is time for questions and answers at the end of the session. So I would encourage you to speak up, to submit questions. There's a couple of ways that you can send questions to myself and our panelists, who I'll introduce in just a minute here. One way is you can post comments in the chat. Um, and you're certainly welcome to do so. I would advise you, though, that comments in the chat are visible to everyone in attendance. So you want to be sure that you're very diplomatic and respectful in anything that you post in the chat, and aware of the privacy concerns that might go along with that. The other option is that you can post questions via the Q&A feature in Zoom. And when you do that, your questions will just go to me as the moderator and to our panelists here. And I will introduce them in a second. But one question that comes up every time we host one of these events is this event being recorded? And in fact, today's event is recorded. It usually takes me about a week, so be patient, but be on the lookout for email that will come from me about a week from now after I done a little bit of post-processing on the video. And at that point, you'll be able to go back, rewind some of the important things that you learned, or share it with others. It will be freely available to everyone, everyone that you're connected to. Now, before I introduce our panelists, I just wanted to give a little bit of a preface because, again, I think we have a lot of people in attendance that have um, been in attendance at previous sessions, and you know that it's pretty rare that we invite vendors or folks from that are representing a product or a suite of services. But what we found happening again and again is at eXp Technical, we support hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses, and we support over 100 architectural firms among those hundreds of businesses that we support. And we kept seeing a lot of the same problems coming up again and again and again with collaboration, with remote access. People were sometimes frustrated with the SharePoint experience or with synchronization problems with SharePoint, or had issues with VPN connections to a server, or a lot of other problems that we'll discuss as we go here. But what we found was that there was like a suite of microservices that are available that tended to solve a lot of those problems for a lot of our clients. And so that's one reason why we wanted to invite a couple of guests here to help us to kind of share with you what we've learned or what we've seen work well for many of our clients, not just in the AEC industries, but also in many other small and medium-sized businesses around Western Washington. So joining me today is Kyle Walstead, who is a manager of partner solutions engineering at Ignite. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kelly. Really excited to be here.
Oh, great. I'm excited. I've seen what you have to share, so I'm really looking forward to getting out of the way and letting you go.
Good deal.
Also joining us from Ignite is Dan Burke. Dan is the partner sales manager at Ignite. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Kelly, thanks for having us on the call today.
All right. And it looks like you're on a patio somewhere enjoying
Yeah,
a
this is
fruity drink.
those Wisconsin grads in the crowd here will
Oh,
recognize this as the Terrace Memorial, the Terrace of Memorial Union.
it's lost on me, unfortunately. I
Yeah,
apologize for that.
someday,
But
someday, when Washington goes to Wisconsin.
and then so that I am not outnumbered by the Ignite guys, we also have Jeff Shaplick joining us, and Jeff is a consultant too, and a team lead here at EXP Technical. He'll kind of be representing the EXP Technical perspective and also the voice of our client, I think, in these conversations. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Kelly, thanks for having me. I'm
All
looking
right.
forward to this.
Yeah, and so we're just about ready to get to the good stuff, but there are a couple of uncredited cameos that we'll be hearing from, a couple of uncredited guest speakers, and I'm going to introduce you all to one of them right now. Let's see. Here she is. She just wanted to talk about her perspective with remote access. This is a woman named Gaia, and I'll just let her speak for herself here.
Last night, I was deep into designing the Fairview lobby. Everything was finally coming into place, and when I went to save my progress, my internet connection dropped. The file closed unexpectedly, and I lost 2 hours of work.
Kyle, I thought that might be a good maybe a good segue. I know that's just one of many problems, but I thought Gaia's little issue there. Of course, she's AI for anyone that couldn't tell. But I thought her issue might be a good segue to kind of show our guests here around the Ignite environment and give them a just an overview of some of the things that's to come throughout the presentation here.
Sure, yeah. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we can kind of get started here. I'm glad you clarified that was AI.
I know it was.
Sure, yeah.
You really needed me to tell you that, right?
Yeah. But in all honesty, the concept is something that we hear, somewhat regularly, right? A lot of organizations, especially AEC organizations, are looking to move to the cloud, but a lot of cloud-based tools are not purpose-built for them. They don't work with their applications and different things. So many of them are still tethered to on-prem infrastructure, still require VPN, have some of these challenges that that she highlighted. So we'll start with just the basics of Ignite. There's going to be a few demos here today. Each is probably 5 to 7 minutes long, something like that, with some discussion between. So this first portion of the demo is really just, I would say, almost the Ignite 101, right? Ignite, first of all, you're looking at it, right? This is Ignite. In this particular case, I've got this web browser view of Ignite. I've also got Ignite on my desktop app, right? You'll notice in this case, it's my S drive is mapped and connected to the exact same data that you have here in the browser. Well, Ignite from the very beginning was built as a file server replacement tool, right? In the early days, we didn't target any specific industry. We didn't build any particular products for particular verticals, we'll say. We just set to build what we called instant infrastructure. And the tagline was your on-demand file server. And really what it was from the very beginning was, a cloud file server just sort of before the buzz of the word cloud, right? So one of the things, that makes Ignite kind of great, right? Or one of the things our customers often like about Ignite is you shouldn't really need to learn anything new to use Ignite, right? Ignite is built as, in this case, a map drive. I've got my S drive, and I can access this anytime I have an internet connection, right? So I no longer need a VPN when I'm remote. Now, you can also access the same data through a web browser, or as I'll show you in one of our kind of upcoming demos, from your mobile device as well. There's an Ignite app where you can access your data. So from any device, anytime you have an internet connection, you can access this. Ignite was designed again as a file server replacement tool. So I won't go in through all the nitty gritty of each, different option here with permissions and things like that. But as you could imagine, we built our permissions very similar to how businesses managed data for 40 years with on-prem file servers, right? I could select, in this case, my finance department has access to the finance folder, right? Well, by default, that permission will cascade down through the subfolders. But at any subfolder level, you can make adjustments. You can be more restrictive, right? So that's a simple example with, employees for a department. You could imagine that there are use cases for projects and templates, and we'll get into some of that here today as well. Now, in addition to that permissioning and kind of having the central view of your data, Ignite is also built on immutable object storage that has built-in geographic redundancies. And part of that is you've got versioning, right? Where I can always roll back to any previous version of any one of my files. You'll see this Excel document has 71 versions, and I can see who made each edit when. I can recover a past edit of any of my documents. Deleted files are going to go into a trash bin where they can be restored. And just about every click you can make in Ignite or any interaction with any of your data is gathered into audit reports, right? So that's really what you're getting kind of in Ignite at its core is a central repository where you can manage permissions for your users and groups, and you can ensure that your data is preserved and that it's readily accessible to you anytime you have an internet connection. From an end user perspective, you might simply just work from this map drive. We've even had cases where people have replaced file servers without even telling their users, right? Now, I would say that's relatively infrequent. Normally, you do tell your users, but I think it's a powerful statement because, again, you shouldn't need to learn anything new in order to use Ignite, right? Well, that being said, it is a brand new set of technology, right? You don't need a VPN when you're remote. You do have the ability to say, like, right click on certain folders and choose, hey, I'd like to actually mark this folder for offline access, or you can share content. There's hundreds of integrations that we provide, including, many that are kind of AEC specific. You'll notice I've got mine linked up with the Autodesk Construction Cloud and with Procore, so I could sync projects back and forth. Right, so you're taking this kind of modern sync and share set of capabilities and layering it right onto a very traditional mapped drive. And part of the beauty of that is a lot of the applications that we find that are common in this space, right? You could think just, let's say, drawing files or even, design type files, right? ArcGIS, Civil 3D, a lot of them were built, designed to work off of a map drive. They have locking mechanisms built in. They have links and references to other files that are designed around people having consistent paths to that data. So Ignite providing this map drive, providing the automated file locking, right? And giving the experience almost as if every user was in the same office connected to the same file server is really core to what we do. So I think that concludes kind of my first, portion of the demo. Again, really, this is all the stuff that got us in the door that we've been doing from the beginning, and that we're really kind of best in class at just being that file server replacement tool. And we'll certainly dive a little bit deeper into some, more specific use cases as we go forward. I'll go ahead and stop sharing here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kyle. So, Jeff, I was kind of hoping to loop you in a little bit to get the perspective of, what it's like when we roll this out. Can you speak at all to like the end user perspective? Is it discontinuous? Is there a lot of frustration, or what have you seen when we've had clients that have gone from either a file server or SharePoint or some other system for collaboration to this sort of framework?
Yeah, no, I mean, when we've received requests, a lot of clients have wanted to try to get away from that on-prem file server. And when I've suggested Ignite, and the transition has been pretty seamless. As Kyle mentioned, you can almost not even say anything to the end users and put it in place because all the data, they're accessing it the same way as they're used to accessing it when they had a file server. So it's just a network drive. They double click on the file, it opens, and away they go. So they really don't see much of a change.
Actually, I'll just jump in here too. We've
Oh, sure,
seen
please.
scenarios where people actually find that the performance is a little bit better depending on the age of the equipment, right? Everybody has some switching equipment in a closet somewhere or in a data center, old hardware, old disks, right? Just some standard performance issues. So, in addition to sometimes that seamless leave on Friday, show up on Monday, it just works. Sometimes it actually works a little bit better, which is awesome. And frankly, from a TCO perspective, it's not just the file server. You're often replacing other tools like your VPN tools, other things you might need for backup and data protection, storage and snapshots and things like that. And Ignite will do all of that as part of the system. As you said, a service or a set of microservices.
Right. Boy, and that gets me thinking too, back to you, Jeff, on this. That option, there's the things that we're talking about replacing require a ton of support and maintenance, or can potentially require a ton of support and maintenance. Like file servers need patching, backup systems need regular test restores and monitoring. Jeff, do you have any insight as to what support, what the support effort has, been before and after this sort of migration?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think many clients are really surprised at how smooth the transition goes, but
Mhm.
then also how minimal calls we get about it being problematic. Um, a lot of clients that instead of having a file server, if they've had SharePoint or other solutions like Dropbox that use more of a syncing utility, um, and they've been converted to Ignite, we hardly hear from them. Where
Yeah.
previously you might have a couple of sync issues that we have to deal with, and then support costs go up for the client and that sort of thing. So it's really been a good solution for anybody who's moved that direction.
Right. So if you're working with the IT support provider where there's an incremental cost for support
Yeah.
and those sync issues go away, then those incremental costs go away. I mean, I'm not trying to give away our consulting services,
Well,
but we we
that's
we
part
do,
of it.
it is one of our values to do the right thing. And so we want
Yeah.
to guide our clients towards a more stable environment, even in some cases where it means a little bit less support revenue for EXP
And
in,
to that
in some
point,
instances.
yeah, to Kelly, to that point, in addition to supporting EXP and providing Ignite to your clients, I have a variety of different roles, including working with other MSPs and some onboarding. And that's one of our top things we talk about is your OneDrive support tickets are going to fall off to practically nothing because you're just not going to have those sorts of issues.
And not to belabor the point, but there's even a comedian. I don't know if anyone has seen this. I didn't find this before the event that does a bit about OneDrive and SharePoint. And
Oh, really?
OneDrive and they're great tools. We are a
Right.
Microsoft partner. I'm not bad mouthing those tools.
Sure.
And Ignite certainly is not for everyone, but there is kind of a bit of I just want to save this data on my S drive. I don't want to save it in some folder on SharePoint that I can't
Right.
find or squirreled
Right.
away in
It's
Teams
never going to
somewhere.
sync. Right.
Yeah,
Fine. That's good.
exactly.
I'll have to look for that. Good stuff.
Well, that might be a good segue to our next section here, or our next segment here. I'm going to share, let's see if he comes up. We have another guest to join us, and this is Brandon. Brandon's kind of a mopey AI, but we'll hear his issues and his concerns. So here comes Brandon. Oops, we still got Gael.
Last
Let me move on to Brandon. Here comes Brandon.
I walked the job site this morning and I took about 40 photos. They're all still on my phone. At some point, I'll email them to myself and then download them, then try to remember which project they belong to. That's usually how it goes.
I think they should call Brandon Eeyore or something. He's
Absolutely.
full disclosure, he's AI, but he's mimicking my voice. So it's not my voice, but it was my pacing. So that mopey pace maybe came from me. But anyway, Kyle, this might be a segue to another example of what the end user experience might be, like field collaboration. And I understand you have some information prepared to speak to that as well.
Yeah, I think I think in general, for this portion of the demo here, I'm going to take you through a handful of features and functions that Ignite has built very specifically for the AEC vertical. Now, some of these could be useful in other, types of, some ad agencies work on projects and things like that as well, right? But generally speaking, I mentioned initially, we didn't set out to target any particular industries. But after being in business for about 5 or 6 years, we looked up and we noticed how come 25% of our customer base, has a similar profile, right? And I think a lot of the reasons were the large and complicated file types, the need for file locking, the XREFs, the, collaboration requirements that are common when you're working with, architecture firms and various different specialty contractors and a general contractor, and everybody's trying to make sure that you're working on the same plan so that things don't get built in the wrong places, right? Those were all the reasons why the industry gravitated towards Ignite from the beginning, right? But then we started to sort of listen to our customers, not that we didn't before, but we really, made sure that we were listening to our customers and trying to understand what we could do to add more value to some of the workflows that are common, right? And I'd classify these into a couple of buckets, right? And we're not going to have a chance to show you through every single feature here today. But generally speaking, some of it is how organizations work with projects, right? The life cycle of a project, creating new projects, managing data associated with projects, collecting data with projects, closing out projects, cleaning, data up, over time, etc. And really helping with various workflows associated with projects. And I would say the other is certifying Ignite for specific file types and optimizations that can ensure that we work as best as possible with, the common file types that we see, in the industry. So we can kind of talk about that a little bit as well. The first thing I'll pull up here is my projects folder. And one of the things you might notice is that these have a slightly different icon. Same thing when I'm accessing from my map drive. These particular folders have been marked as what we call projects, right? So a project is, a type of folder, and this can have, for example, a dashboard where it might have an address or a map. It might have certain specification files or, saved URLs. You can bookmark certain things, right? You've got some key details associated with your projects, right? You'll notice if I go here into the project settings as well, you can do things like have a timeline associated with the project, right? So when you mark a project as done, you can clean up the project, right? So this project gets marked as completed, and we're automatically cleaning up guest access, external links, maybe moving this folder to a closed projects area where it's read-only for your employees, or some sort of workflow that you can choose to initiate when you close projects out to make sure that you don't have kind of data and loose ends kind of floating out there. You'll also see this smart upload folder. Now, this kind of speaks specifically towards Brandon's pain point that he imitated Kelly to introduce to us.
That
right?
he moped his way through.
Yes, he did. Doesn't sound like a fun guy to go to a party with, but in any case, not you, Kelly. You're great at parties.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. But
But
go on.
so in any case, what Smart Upload is Smart Upload gives you the ability to set a geolocation for your projects and then apply a radius so that your mobile device knows when you're there, right? So the idea here is that you can take photos. I've got my mobile app pulled up, and I actually have my home address saved as like a project location. So you see it's actually recommending, you probably can't see very well in kind of this, me just showing it like this, but it's recommending that I upload photos to the site, right? So based on just taking the photos, and you don't need to have the app out or anything like that. You're just on site, you take photos, then later The Ignite app will remind you, hey, it looks like you took 12 photos while you were on site at this project today. Would you like to upload those? Maybe you say, you know what, I just want to upload these 8, not all 12, because those were of us having lunch or something like that. You can absolutely do that. And those photos will get saved right into your that smart upload folder. So in my case, I've got a photos folder for each project, and this is applied as the smart upload folder for each account. So you can see some of these photos that I've taken kind of at my house before. There was sadly a tree died, had to be taken down, and some of those different types of things. But that's the idea of us kind of helping people that are in the field taking photos, ensure that those are collected into the right place for a given project. And again, this is that same exact folder structure that somebody might be working from their map drive on, or when you're closing out the project, you can share the link to the client right from here. Couple of things that I'll just kind of highlight here real quick. I'm sort of keeping an eye on time. I think we're doing all right for a few more minutes. Kelly will interrupt me if I'm going over too much, but
Yeah, I'll bring out the big hook for you, but
yeah.
you're doing fine. You've got plenty of time right now.
Okay, good deal. Let me briefly walk you through the process of creating a new project, right? Because I've built actually some automation in terms of the permissions, setting them up in a dynamic way, right? So, I've got a template for projects where I can create, and you could have multiple, projects associated with this. I'm going to use this construction project. And what this will allow me to do, and I'll just call this, why don't I just call this webinar 519, project ID 519, and we'll say this is a pending project. So I can go ahead and save this. This is going to walk me through this process of adding a timeline, files, address, smart upload, and some other metadata associated with projects that you might choose to add or to import. And then if I go ahead and say skip this setup, what I want to highlight is what this has done is this actually dynamically created a few groups that I can now use when applying permission for this project, right? So I have this template, and we want the permissions to be the same for each template. But the role or the people that are in the roles working on those projects can differ from project to project, right? And so in this particular case, I've got this group set up for external team. So when I'm working with, specialty contractors, or when I've got to share with the design agency, or any of my other partners that I'm working with on this project, all I have to do is add their email to this particular group, and I know that they've got access to the external folders that we're sharing for this particular project. And if I'm working on multiple projects with them, I just add them to the groups to each of the projects that they're working with us, on. And I know that they've got access to all the different subfolders from there. So I'm not inviting them and then going around, okay, which folders do I add this person to? Okay, which folders do I add this person to? This is a dynamic group that gets created and applied. Similarly, I've got different project teams, and I can assign, hey, is this project team A, B, or C that's working on this particular deal? And who are the project managers assigned to this particular project as well, right? And so the permissions are consistent project to project, but the people that serve those roles may be different project to project. And I built that, we built that right into this project template feature. And I would say the last thing that I might kind of pull up a quick detail on is something that we call adaptive block caching. This is something that's kind of, I think sometimes hard to show, in a demo, because this is just stuff that we've done to make things faster for specific applications, right? So we've, you could think of adaptive block caching, something similar to like watching a video in YouTube or, in Netflix or something. You don't need to download the entire video to get into it and to start working, right? So if I go ahead and just kind of run this, you see we've got kind of two versions. One where it's actually downloading the file, and another case where it's using adaptive block caching. And you see it's able to actually pull up the image right away, as well as the external reference points. And it's able to get you in and working on, your file and get changes made, much more quickly, right? And it's accomplishing the same on the other side. So, really, your mileage may vary, so to speak, right? In terms of the size of files, the number, your operating system, all of these different types of things. The point here really is that there is a ton that we're doing to really understand and break down many of the key file types and to certify them and to optimize our app for performance. So when Dan was kind of talking about how Ignite can sometimes actually be faster than your local on-prem, a big part of that is because we're doing caching of data, we're syncing just the incremental changes or incremental blocks, we're streaming blocks to these users' machines. So even though they're working from an internet connection, potentially from large files, we're doing a lot to sort of optimize and give I call it perceived performance, because users don't care how long it takes to download a file or how long it takes to upload it. They care how long it takes to open when they click on it, or how long until their colleague can see the changes that they made, or that they didn't work for an hour on a file and then find out, oh, somebody else was in there also working. Now what do we do to reconcile? Or people are working off the wrong versions of files. So there's a lot that we've built in to our product in order to be very fast, or at least give the perception that it's fast, even if you have poor bandwidth or are working with very large files. So maybe I'll leave it at that for now. Again, this portion of the demo was really focused on some of the features that we've built very specific to our AEC customers.
I'll jump in on perception, just being kind of an ignorant end user, but that's slow load times are the sort of frustration that lead to morale issues. And executives and operations professionals might be looking at this as like, oh, increased productivity because people are working sooner. And those are real payoffs. But if people have to sit and wait for a file or for a model to upload, they get irritated. Be responsive is one of our values at EXP, because we know that people just hate waiting and they hate the uncertainty of how long is this going to take. So it's interesting, enlightening to see from my perspective, which also, reminds me, Dan, you said something, I think, in some of our prep sessions, that you had a personal connection to someone that kind of fell in love with some of the smart upload features. Was that right?
Yep. Actually, it's not mine. It's my my boss, Tim, our director for MSP. And he was saying that we've both been on the job a couple of years now, but when he first started, he was having dinner with his brother, and he said, oh, I've gone to work for this company, Ignite. And his brother goes, wait, with Ignite with a Y? And he said, yeah. He goes, oh my God, this has made such a huge difference for us. Turns out he's a general contractor. He's out in the field building stuff. And he said, this is incredible. I can get access to the drawings on my iPad. I can take pictures. They're automatically uploaded to the project folder. He said it's made a huge difference in terms of productivity for his folks out in the field. So I thought that was a great, and I don't have a big, construction or AEC background. I actually spent my internal IT years working for law firms. Speaking of productivity issues, they care about making sure they can bill, but having ability to get access to those files from anywhere, especially with how much internet is available out in the world, is really a powerful change.
I'm just shocked that he said Ignite with a Y and not Ignite with an E. I mean, isn't that the comment that you hear?
I think the Y is what stuck
out. Y is in your logo, though.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's probably why.
The Y is part of your branding, right?
It is. It is.
Hey, Jeff, I didn't mean to speak over you. Were you going to say something there, or I don't? And I also don't want to put you on the spot.
No, that's right. I was just going to say that I think a lot of clients that have started using Ignite have realized how much better the experience is out in the field. Many field techs would have to use a VPN to connect into the file server on an iPad or an iPhone, and it'd just be super painful. But they know they need to get to access that file while they're there. And this alleviates that completely. Being able to just you open up the Ignite app, open up the PDF, show what you need to show while you're while you're out in the field. It's just a huge win for the clients.
Yeah, definitely. Well, just in interest of keeping us moving forward, there are a handful of questions that are coming into the Q&A, and I think I'm going to batch them just because we also have an agenda. So we'll get to those. Be patient. If you posed a question, I see them and we'll get to them. Our next segment, I'm just going to stop sharing immediately, but our next segment is focused on some of the practical AI applications that are available within this environment. And again, I'm going to, back to you, Kyle. I feel like the anchor man, the newscaster here, but go ahead when you're
Great.
ready.
Yeah, no, look, and I'll share my screen here in one moment, or actually I'll share it as I'm kind of introducing the topic. But, one of the things that we hear is, well, first of all, it's 2026 and it's a tech presentation. I'm sure you are expecting to hear the word AI at least a few dozen times. But, I think one of the challenges is people are trying to find ways to use it, right? How to use it, right? How to implement it, where to get ROI, those different types of things. And so what I'm kind of going to highlight is sort of a little bit of my methodology and then a few tips, and I call this kind of practical implementations of AI, right? And I break up I break these things up into sort of crawl, walk, and run type use cases, right? It helps me kind of get my mind around it, and hopefully, it'll help me articulate, this clearly as a part of the presentation today. But generally speaking, when I'm talking about a crawl use case, it's one that requires no setup, right? It's one that's just sort of available and users can use it, right? And how somebody uses it today may be different than how they use it tomorrow. How one department uses it might be different, right? And just kind of making it available and allowing users to kind of use some of the AI can be very valuable. So when I say crawl use cases, sometimes the crawl use cases are just as valuable as a walk or run use case. It's really just one that doesn't require any sort of setup, right? Extract insights out of data or help you find what you're looking for, help you answer a question, those sorts of different things, right? Then we'll talk about walk use cases where you can do a little bit of setup, right? You can maybe say, hey, I want to make a knowledge base for this project, or I want to enrich my data, right? We've taken all these images out in the field, but I want to know what those images are, right? And I want to be able to search and sort and find similar images and, different things like that. Those are maybe what I would call walk type use cases. And then run use cases to me are where you're really starting to kind of lean into something agentic in order to, I usually try not to think about it as like replacing somebody, right? But more improving their work, right? Or reducing the time it takes for people to do certain tasks. So we'll talk about some of that here today. So a couple of crawl use cases real quick. You've got the ability to ask questions of documents. So I'm just going to pull up this file. This is a PDF file that I've got on my file system, and I will start, asking questions of this file. Actually, real quick, while I'm right-clicking and about to click this Ask a Document, I'll just point your attention to Send to Studio Session. I think that was one of the questions that came into the Q&A is,
Yes.
does this integrate with Studio Session? It does. So this is where that shows up, right? You can send a PDF to Studio Session. In this particular case, I'm going to choose the Ask a Document. But I wanted to actually pull up the file just so you could see kind of what type of file that I'm working from here. In this particular case, it's a 54-page specification sheet. And my user just right-clicked on this file, said ask a document, and they can begin typing questions into here. So, I might say, tell me about the trusses. Some sort of question that I can just type, and get some sort of response, right? So this is going to go through this document. It's going to identify anything it can about trusses, and it's going to provide me with a response. So this is telling me some details about, floor trusses, roof trusses, how far on center they must be, right? Some of the key requirements associated with the trusses within this, and as well as kind of sources to where in the document that it found this information, right? So again, simple single document Q&A, right? Now you might have multiple files that you want to ask the question, or folders that you want to ask the question, or maybe you just want to run a search and you want Ignite to kind of help you find what you're looking for and you don't maybe know even where it is, right? So if I pull up, I'm just pulling up, you can do this in the browser or on the mobile device or different areas as well. I'm just pulling this up in the desktop app because a lot of times users aren't always working in the browser with Ignite. They've got their map drive, they've got the desktop app running on their machine. And maybe I say, bids for airport project. I could probably actually not even fix that and it would figure it out, but I'll go ahead and fix it just for practical purposes here. So I will say that is one of the things I like about AI is when I make typos, it usually figures out what the heck this dummy is trying to ask. But first, what you'll see here are typical search, type results, right? These are based on keywords, right? This is the word project in there, the word airport in there, right? The words that are, in these documents get shown up here. This has bid in it, right? But then we've got this AI overview where effectively it's trying to actually understand, hey, what the heck is it that this person is actually asking, or what are they actually after? And then it's providing me with, a result, right? So this is telling me, about a particular airport project that, that there's an RFP out for, and some of the key, aspects associated with bidders, right? And it's actually given me, the detail and the sources of where it found that, right? So again, another crawl use case, right? These are just tools that are available to help you, accomplish more, using AI, right? You don't need to set anything up. Now, the next thing that I'll kind of highlight here is, a bit of a walk type use case, right? Or, maybe the framework for one, right? So you can do a couple of things. You can create knowledge bases. When you're creating a knowledge base, we're doing some advanced indexing and chunking of the data within that knowledge base. We're expecting that you might ask questions of that knowledge base. So we're effectively preparing the data, into a RAG and agentic React architecture that sits underneath the file system, right? So you can turn folders into knowledge bases and effectively enrich the data there, right? So maybe for different projects or for your SOPs or for your proposals or whatever the case might be, you can do that. Another thing that you can do is build workflows. So here's a couple workflow engines that I've built. So in one, I've built a little workflow with my investment analysts where, hey, when a new opportunity comes and hits our desk, I'm creating a preliminary investment recommendation through AI, then I'm sending it to the investment analyst team for review. And if it passes their review by at least two of those analysts, it goes for executive approval. And then if it's approved, then it moves forward, right? So this is a example of a workflow that I've built, around a specific, set of steps that users need to take. So I'm helping prevent the need to, manage this externally to Ignite and helping to kind of automate and push these steps forward when you've got, in this case, new investment opportunities. This other one here is for image analysis. So this is an example similar to, that overlays or plays nicely with that smart upload folder, where basically in my projects folder, any of these image types, when they get added anywhere under projects, I'm running this AI prompt to extract insight from the image. Like, what the heck is this image of? What are some of the objects in this image? What project stage is this associated with? What other context can you offer me associated with this particular image? And so when I come back to my folder structure and take you into, one of these, folders with, photos, the metadata is associated with all of these. Oops. Did I click? Sorry, I must have double clicked there. We are live, folks. I'm not quite sure. I'm got seems to be hanging in the browser. Let me see if I can just refresh this. Push this forward. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, I don't know what was going on with that, but what you'll notice here is that I've got this metadata associated with these images. So here's an image that I just took this afternoon and just uploaded, from my phone just 5 minutes before this demo started, right? This is kind of what I see out my kind of window here, a couple dog toys, lemon tree, cactus, etc. But you'll notice that it's got these tags associated with them. So this data is being enriched with details about what the heck it is, as well as what the project and the address and some of these other details associated with this this particular location, right? Now, the last thing that I've got a couple minutes of time to spend on is a couple of those run type use cases. What I would say is run use cases are going to have to be specific to you, right? These are a couple ideas, right? Some common things. And we've actually kind of built Ignite to help with things like a specification analyst, to help with a proposal coordinator, to help with, some of these different types of things, effectively giving you templates of use cases that we've found to be common across, kind of the industry, and then allowing you to modify the template for your own kind of usage. So let me give you just a couple of examples here. So if I go to agents, you'll see I've got a proposal coordinator agent. I've got a RFP bid leveling agent, right? The sky's the limit with this stuff, really. What I'll do in this particular case, I'll show you through a workflow for an RFP bid leveling agent, right? But I can come here, I can find my files. I've told this agent that I'm going to provide it with an RFP and with bid documents. And so if I click into my project here and find my bid documents, I can add the bids that came in for this particular project. And then I can click here and add the RFP, just type RFP there. And so this is the RFP for those particular bids. So I've given it proposals and the RFP, and I'm going to go ahead and hit send. So effectively what this is going to do is this is going to analyze each of those proposals as it compares to the RFP. It's going to identify in key areas, how well it lines to the requirements laid out in the RFP. It's going to identify various kind of risk that might exist in any of those, bids. And then it's effectively going to grade them on a scale 1 to 100 and compare them to one another, and then offer a human kind of analyst some advice for next steps that they could take, right? Maybe, you could throw out these couple of bids, they don't match. Maybe, maybe clarify this point or that point on this particular bid before considering it, right? Things like that. So in this particular case, it's telling me, hey, this particular proposal, technical steps, specs, there's a medium risk. There's some kind of gap in terms of what it explicitly states, right? So maybe an opportunity for us to make sure we clarify before moving forward, and so forth. And here's the next proposal. This has low risk across the board, so this appears to be a good, match, and so forth. And then here now it's given a grade for each, and then a total score out of 100, and an executive summary of kind of potential next steps to take. And again, this is one example where I'm the one creating the RFP and receiving bids, but you could imagine the reverse, right? Helping you create the proposal to, match the RFP and to win the bid in the first place, right? Or again, really the sky's the limit with a lot of this kind of AI stuff, so to speak. But wanted to start with a couple of practical use cases and see if I couldn't get the juices flowing a little bit.
Right. Well, it certainly does for me as somebody that writes proposals. I mean, so we're talking about all of this in the context of scenarios that apply to architectural firms, engineering and construction. But every business, practically every business, is in the business of generating RFPs or responding to them with proposals. Or if you're in the nonprofit world, it's grants and applications. We all have SOPs. We all have, what I'm saying are things that apply, pretty universally. I want to change gears though a little bit in the interest of time, and get Jeff and Dan to speak to this, because one of the things that's really worked well for EXP is that Ignite has a process that's pretty easy to kind of try it before, to experience how this works and to do a little bit of exploration before you make a commitment. And maybe, Jeff, I'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit about what the experience has been when when it looks like it might be a solution? Maybe we have a demo, a proof of concept, a working session. What are your thoughts? What's the experience been, Jeff?
Yeah, no, many that have looked at the solution, and it's nice to see this beautiful presentation that Kyle and you put on, but to actually start using it in the real world in your own environment is what is going to, help you decide on if it's a good solution for you. And most people use similar applications, but it's also good just to test all the applications that you have, and we want to make sure it's a good fit for your business. So to do the demo, it's pretty quick. I mean, you could reach out to myself, or your primary consultant,
Okay.
or Kelly.
If you're not
And
already
we
an
can,
EXP technical client, you can
yep.
connect with me and I can coordinate. But I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Go
No,
ahead, Jeff.
that's correct. And we can get you set up. I mean, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that, and get you kind of a tutorial on how to use it, and then you can start putting real projects in and testing it out.
And maybe more specifically, Ignite is very generous, or maybe generous isn't the right word, but they have a demo or a trial license process that works really well, where we can actually migrate data. Correct? And Dan, it looks like you're coming off mute. You wanted to speak to that, I think.
Right. No, we understand that this is a change, to Jeff's point. We want to make sure that everybody has the ability to get their hands on it. So, we have a flexibility. We have a variety of different plans that you can use with different features. Kyle showed some of the project stuff and AI. And so we want to give people the ability to use the tools and make sure that they feel comfortable with it. And then a lot of times what will happen is they'll identify a small group of folks, move a project or two in, get them using that, go home, work remotely on it, really vet the thing out. And then once they're ready to move forward, we can keep that trial domain and convert it into production, and then start. And we've got tools to help migrate data. Of course, that's what EXP specializes in, but we've got built-in tools to help with those migrations, including SharePoint and a variety of those things. So we make it easy to both try and to cut over.
And just to be clear, when you say trial license, you mean there's no cost for that trial license for a limited period of time?
Yep. Yeah. Our default, I'll say it out loud. Our default is a couple of weeks, but we do tend, by the time everyone gets their hands on it and they start using it. Everybody says, "Hey, can I use it for another week or so?" Whatever, that's fine. We can accommodate those sorts of requests.
Eliminates a lot of the uncertainty. And I think Kyle, you were talking about maybe having like workflow sort of brainstorming sessions or that
Yeah,
kind of exploration.
look, well, you could approach this in a lot of different ways, right? One thing that I've seen be successful for folks is what I like to refer to as like a workshop, right? Um, where instead of just doing a hour-long demo with Ignite or a half an hour-long demo with Ignite and then leaving and then, oh, here, let me try this in a trial, etc. The format for these workshops, that I'm kind of thinking of, and obviously this is all open and flexible, um, typically it's all right, 5-10 minute, quick overall kind of pitch, get some of the juices flowing in terms of, hey, here's some of the things that are possible that we're hearing. Then actually, let's start talking about your data, your use cases, some of the challenges that you have finding documents, some of the processes that you have. And I love to do them in person where possible, but generally like whiteboard, hey, let's get 10 use cases for your business written down here. And then let's actually use the remaining time to build 2 or 3 of these, right? So that you actually come and leave with some working prototypes to accomplish some of the use cases for your business. And then usually that leaves us with some next steps to work with you through to maybe the other 7 items that we didn't kind of get to in that first meeting, right? But it really, I think, kind of breaks down the barrier of entry, right? This stuff doesn't need to be so um or I guess it feels intangible sometimes, and then kind of making it
Yeah.
tangible is really the goal that I often have with a lot of those workshops.
It's tangible when people see their own processes or their own data in that environment.
I think it's also helpful, not to, and I won't belabor the point, but about the AI stuff, what we find is that a lot of organizations really don't even know where to get started. There are so many tools out there. It feels like you're throwing, a dart into the darkness, right? And maybe you'll hit something. And it's kind of nice to have some very specific tools, AI tools built to leverage your data, your individual customer data, so you can create some agents or create some knowledge bases. And happy to work with you, Kelly and Jeff and Kyle, to put on maybe a follow-up session if people have some other questions about that.
Right, right. And speaking of questions, we've got like 2 minutes, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We have hit several of the questions kind of in line, uh, uh, very adeptly. Are there any in the list? It looks like Kyle has addressed each of them either during the presentation or sent a note directly to each of those. So I think that knocks off all the questions. There was one that came up earlier, I think, about integration with Claude and other AI tools. Um, Kyle or Dan, do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. We Ignite provides an MCP server, so you can add Ignite as a connector to something like a Claude or a GPT and things like that. And it's going to respect all of your permissions and things. It's also got tools that you can provide that reach far beyond just being a file system, right? So Claude can actually use our advanced search capabilities. It can take advantage of some of the RAG and React, architecture that we've built on our side to enrich that data, right, and kind of make the experience even better. I'll say we're also an MCP, kind of client ourselves, meaning you can add non-Ignite sources like your email or your Slack or your Procore or different environments to the AI within Ignite. So when you're using Ignite's AI, of course, it can pull and access the files in Ignite, but you can actually connect non-Ignite repositories as well, just like you would be able to in Claude.
Awesome. That might be a next session or maybe a personalized specific session for a client. I would say for those of you that are in attendance, if you have questions, if you want to schedule a workshop or a demonstration or migrate some of your data, you can connect directly with me. Everyone has my contact information, Or if you're an EXP technical client, you can connect with your primary consultant and we can coordinate that demo process. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. Kyle, especially, thank you so much. Dan, thank you as well. And Jeff. And Dan, I'm going to give the last word to you. We've got, I think, about 45 seconds here. So
Yeah, great.
do you have anything
I
to take us home?
appreciate. I know sometimes these things can go long. We wanted to make sure that we're providing everybody with something really tangible. Understand what the solution looks like. If you've got any questions at all, EXP is a fantastic partner. They do a ton of work with us, and reach out to them. They will loop in Kyle and myself. We've got subject matter experts all over. So even if you're not in AEC, as you said, Kelly, you might be in life sciences or whatever it is. We've got all sorts of expertise and we can help.
Perfect. Thanks. I think that's a great last word. Thank you all for attending, and I think we'll call it good today. So thank you
Awesome.
again, and we'll see you all soon.
Good deal. Thank you very much.